Good morning. My name is Dick Baily, and on behalf of the worship team, welcome to worship with the First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Today is a special day. It's a special Sunday. It's Pride Sunday. And we invite you to join us in worshiping. I'll get this right. We invite you to join us in worship, celebrating the struggles, the victories, the lives, and the loves of folks in the LGBTIQ community. With us today is a guest preacher, the wonderful QuianaDenae Perkins, tuning in from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where she serves the Ann Arbor Unitarian Universalist congregation as the coordinator of congregational life. She's also a new seminary student starting a ministerial journey at the Star King School for the Ministry in the fall. In addition, QuianaDenae volunteers with Black Lives of UU, doing community building and religious education. We are so fortunate to be asked to join in along with her today as she takes a walk in the garden of faith. First, a couple of logistical announcements. Please turn your camera off while we begin our service and light our chalice and candles. This will allow us to begin with a quiet space. We will turn our cameras on to greet each other later in the service. Please note that we are recording this service, so if you do not want to be in the recording, please keep your camera turned off. For your best viewing experience, we recommend that you make sure you have the most up-to-date version of the Zoom app on your computer. And now a special welcome from board member Lucius Savage.
Good morning, everybody. Obviously, my name is Lucius Savage. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees, and we're very glad you're with us this morning. For those of you who don't know me, I have raised my family at UU Oakland, and I hope to grow old with you. And I'm proud to say this is my 30th Pride Sunday at UU Oakland. We are an intentionally multi-generational, multiracial, multicultural, inclusive, and anti-oppressive religious community. You are welcome here. We invite you to fill out the guest connection card you will see in the chat. We want to be able to support you on your exploration of what's available in our community that interests you and how you might participate. There will be a newcomer breakout room immediately after the service, hosted today by Emily Stoper. Welcome. Now, before we begin, we have a few reminders. First, today after the service is our Board of Trustees meeting. It begins at noon with a 15-minute public comment period. All members and friends are welcome to attend. You can also send comments to secretary@uuoakland.org to be read aloud for you. You can find the link in the Chalice chatter from this week or in today's Zoom chat. Second, at 1:30 today, the high school youth games will occur on the Discord platform. First Unitarian Oakland joins UU Livermore for games and silliness. Contact Alex Hitter-Winnett for sign-on information. And then July 4th, which is next Sunday, will be our first Sunday anti-racism discussion and practice, and what a great day to do that on. Racial identity is not shaped in a neutral environment. As people of faith on a spiritual journey toward wholeness, we gather to understand the dynamics of racial identity and to overcome barriers and oppression created by an individual, institutional, and cultural racism. We encourage you to join in the conversation. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to Dick.
Thank you, Lucia. Today's chalice lighting comes to us via Chalice Camp, originated by Lila Ibrahim and Reverend Dr. Sherry Prudhomme. Please join Noemi de Guzman in saying the words on the screen. I will follow with some additional chalice lighting words, penned especially for Pride by Linda Lee Franson, a worship associate at the Palomar congregation in Southern California.
We light this chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism, May it remind us of the divine spark in all of creation, the power of love to heal what is broken, and to be grateful for life's blessings each day.
On this Pride Sunday, we light this chalice to renew our commitment that no one shall ever again suffer for the right to love. We light this chalice for those who have been ridiculed, that they may find peace. For those who have fought for the choice to marry, whether they have chosen to marry or not to marry. For those who know fear every single day because the loving community in which they are most comfortable is a constant target of emotional and physical violence. We light this chalice for those who are young and feel so isolated, for those who have not yet found supportive community, nor yet experienced positive change, that they may know hope and may know in their hearts that the arc of the moral universe, while frustratingly slow and imperfect at times, shall inexorably bend toward justice. We light this chalice to celebrate our kaleidoscope of diversity, working, loving, and living on the side of love. For this, on this Pride Sunday, we light this flame.
Please join me now in reading the words for the lighting of the Black Lives Matter candle. We light this candle in recognition of the Black Lives Matter movement and of the systemic racism that tries to deny the full humanity of Black people. We commit to dismantling the scourge of systemic racism with daily action. And today, we are lifting up in the spirit of mercy, compassion, and justice, the horror of the mass shooting last weekend in Oakland. May all know peace.
Peace by the Reverend Linda Hart of the Tahoma UU congregation in Tacoma, Washington.
Peace, embodied in how we treat each other.
Peace, embodied in how we treat each other into the world in compassion and care.
Peace, embodied in how we treat each other into the world in compassion and care, shown in the world by our acts of justice and mercy. We begin today's service with a powerful litany for survival, written and read by Audre Lorde, who was an American writer, feminist, womanist, librarian, and civil rights activist. She was a self-described Black lesbian mother warrior poet who dedicated her life and her work to confronting and addressing injustices of racism, sexism, classism, capitalism, heterosexism, and homophobia. Her poem will be followed by the crescendo choir singing, "I Welcome You."
A litany for survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going in the hours between dawn, looking inward and outward at once, before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the deaths of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, For by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. So when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. And when we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So, it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you from a place in my heart. I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you from a place in my heart. We welcome you from a place in our hearts. We welcome you from a place in our hearts. We welcome you. We welcome you. We welcome you from a place in our hearts. We welcome you. We welcome you. We welcome you from a place in our hearts.
Good people, we now invite you in your best, dignified, orderly, Sunday go-to-meeting fashion to turn on your cameras, unmute your microphones, and greet your neighbors.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning, Mary Jane.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
everybody.
Morning,
Lucia.
Good to
Good morning.
see
Hey,
everybody.
Ron. How are
Good
you?
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi.
See you all.
Good morning.
Hi, long time no
Morning,
see, Marcy.
Dick.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, good morning,
Marcy.
Ellen.
Morning,
Hello,
folks.
Charles.
Morning.
We
Hi,
haven't
Dick. Hey,
met.
Marcy.
Where's the mommy, Hillary? Good morning, Noemi.
Yeah, I know
Hello.
it's
Good
a
morning,
baby.
everyone. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, June.
Hey, Charles.
Hi,
Hi,
Jane.
everyone. Courtney, good
Hi,
morning. We haven't
Noemi.
met.
Hi,
Hello.
Donna. Hey, Mary.
Hello.
Hi,
Morning, Jane.
Hey. Hi, Noemi. Hi,
Not the
Lucia.
Morning,
same.
Marcy.
Hug.
Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Yeah,
Hi.
big
Hi,
hug to all.
Debbie.
Donna.
Hi,
Hi,
Deb.
Charles.
Ingrid.
Yeah. Hi,
Penny.
Kathy.
Hello.
Jay.
Mary.
Jane.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
Hi.
Hugs to everyone.
Aw, I know.
Now is the time for all good folks to discontinue greeting your neighbors and return to mute. Our wisdom story today was crafted by Jessica Love and is being read aloud by Jen Welby Gilbert, founder of the Giving Project for Children.
Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. This is a boy named Julian, and this is his abuela. And those are some mermaids. Julian loves mermaids. Vámonos, mijo. This is our stop. Abuela, did you see the mermaids? I saw them, mijo. Abuela, I am also a mermaid. I'm going to take a bath. You be good. Julian had a good idea. Oh. Uh-oh. Come here, mijo. For me, abuela? For you, Julian. Where are we going? You'll see, said abuela. Mermaids, whispered Julian. Like you, mijo. Let's join them. And they do.
Julian is a mermaid is such a sweet story. It reminds me of an exquisite French movie from 1997, one which, as far as I'm concerned, is a must-see. It's called Ma Vie en Rose, and it's one of my all-time favorite movies. I'll put that reference in the chat after my reflection. Well, here we go, another Pride service. Where to start? What haven't I said before? What bears repeating? I remember when my husband, Greg, and I were in a committed couples class facilitated by our ministers, Rob and Jan Eller Isaacs, in the late 90s. And when I told my life story, Rob responded with, "Dick, what were you thinking?" I had so much shame for being gay growing up. And then that shame was replaced by the shame of cowardice for being slow to come out. And now I was pissed at Rob. Though we were a couple of white guys who are close to the same age, our upbringings were very different. And my lived experience and his lived experience were in many ways polar opposites. So here's a bit of my story, a bit of what I was thinking. I'm old. I will be 74 in just over a month. I grew up in La Mesa, California, a suburb of San Diego, primarily a defense support and military town at the time. We were conservative Christians and Republicans. Beyond the fifth commandment to honor thy father and thy mother, my father was also involved in politics, which meant before you do anything, always take into consideration what the neighbors are going to think. I worked hard not to do anything to embarrass my folks or jeopardize my father's political career. I was proud of him, and though I wasn't any good at sports, I wanted him to be proud of me. Throughout school, I was attracted to some guys, but I don't think they ever knew it. That was my secret, and I expected to take it to my grave. In fact, I did everything to present to those in my world that I was not gay. And some of those things, my associations, my humor, my references to effeminate boys, faggots and pansies and homos and queers, were intentionally, hatefully anti-gay. There's a book written under the pseudonym of John Reed entitled The Best Little Boy in the World, about growing up with just such a secret in those days and all of the ways that boys like me compensated to cover up our predilections. We were so well behaved, so circumspect. I was old before I was young. I dated 2 girls in high school, 1 in college. We were engaged during my junior year and married a week after I graduated. That was the program, the expectation. I checked off all the acceptable boxes and ignored those that weren't acceptable, at least for a while. My wife and I divorced after 3.5 years of marriage. I subsequently dated 5 women successively, in part to prove myself heterosexual, and had my first homosexual experience Easter weekend of 1976 at the age of 28, almost 29. Basically, at that point, I began my much delayed adolescence. And like most adolescents, I embraced my newfound freedom and maturity and made a boatload of mistakes. Given the subsequent AIDS crisis of the 1980s and beyond, I'm really lucky to be alive. So many good people died. I owe my life to my husband, Greg. We've been together since 1984. Some historical context. In 1947, the year I was born, separate but equal was the law of the land in public education and accommodation. Redlining in housing was the rule, not the exception. Even to Black veterans from World War II, returning from World War II and attempting to use the GI Bill. A person couldn't marry a member of another race in all states until 20 years later, and certainly not marry a member of one's own gender for many years to come. In 1967, that is 2 years before I graduated from college and got married, the UUA surveyed its membership regarding homosexuality. What were the results? A full 88% of those responding said homosexuality should be discouraged either by education or by law. Just under 12% were ambivalent. They didn't care one way or the other. And a whopping 10%, let me try that again, and a whopping 0.1% had the effrontery to suggest that homosexuality should be accepted and maybe even celebrated. In other words, most of those liberal Unitarian Universalists in 1967, when I was 20, would just assume that homosexuality go away. And so did I. That was my lived experience. That's what I was thinking back then. Today, I'm thinking of Sam Cooke's powerful song, "A Change Is Gonna Come," that came out when I was in high school, and all the changes that have occurred in lives past and have yet to occur in lives future. One example, on one Sunday in church around the turn of the millennium, the members of this congregation were asked to shout out what was the most significant change that each of us had experienced in our lifetimes. I don't remember if I said anything, but I do remember what Alan Foss said. Alan was in his 90s and husband to Anna Foss, a wonderful woman who has been a member of this congregation longer than almost anyone. When Alan was born, the Wright brothers had just survived the first manned flight. 12 seconds long, traveling 120 feet. Well before Alan died, astronauts had walked on the moon and lived for months on a space station. In 1969, the weekend after I got married, the Stonewall Uprising occurred. In 2000, Californians voted down same-gender marriage equality by 22% and did so again in 2008 by 4%. But a judicial ruling in that year allowed Greg and I to be married in our own home in Oakland. Think of all the wonderful additional changes that may still lie ahead in this century. Obviously, there have been many bumps in the road, and those bumps should never, ever be minimized. They were so painful. Anita Bryant, the Briggs Initiative, Harvey Milk and George Moscone and Dan White and Matthews Shepard and Gwen Araujo. The ever constant threat of violence against transgender individuals, particularly those of color. The mass shooting at the Pulse. While so much has been accomplished, so much remains to be done. As much as we human beings seek to resist change, preferring the security of the unknown, what would our lives have been like without change? I extend that question to folks of all ages, especially old folks like me, who seek a modicum of peace in our retirement. I also want to say to today's youth that change, positive change, is not only real, it's necessary. Positive change is life, your life, and you will experience it. The Trevor Project, the leading national organization providing crisis intervention and suicide prevention services to LGBTIQ youth, which just hired one of our own people, Sam Ames, as Director of Advocacy and Government Affairs, reports that more than half transgender and non-binary youth seriously contemplated suicide this past year. They had a plan. More than half. Research shows that having at least one accepting adult in their lives lowers the incidence of suicide for LGBTIQ youth by 40%. just one accepting adult. Something else you may not know, or you may know but not have fully considered. It's estimated that 40% of homeless youth are LGBTIQ youth, and disproportionately LGBTIQ youth of color and or youth from lower economic circumstances. And we all know that homeless can lead to mental, physical, and behavioral issues that last a lifetime. And WTF. Everywhere I look around, I see buildings that are vacant. So many buildings that could provide much needed shelter, where there's just the social and political will to make it so. Being LGBTIQ can be hard. Being othered is hard, but there are blessings. One of the blessings of being gay in a primarily heterosexual world, ironically, is being the other. As I have told you, I tried hard not to be gay, not to be the other. I had everything going for me. I was white and male and upper middle class and Christian and well-educated and superficially straight. All the power dynamics were on my side, and I possessed all the entitlement of the skids being greased in my favor and all of the tunnel vision that goes along with that entitlement. I still default there a lot. Those early learnings are difficult to expunge. That's something I constantly work on with admittedly uneven success. One of the primary attributes that defines the other is having fewer choices, fewer opportunities. Recently, I was in a group of seniors who were responding to the question, what did you want to be when you grew up? 8 women who were present said they had wanted to be doctors. Not one of them became a doctor. Most became nurses or teachers. Now, these are great people, and I'm sure they were great nurses and teachers. But at the same time, such a shame to dream a dream that cannot be realized for no good reason. Over the course of their lifetimes, a change was going to come. And now 50% of students in medical school are women. Now, I'm not a woman. That's not my way of being another. But by being gay provides me with some insight, some hope of appreciating the lived experiences of people who have been othered in different ways from me. By their race or gender or disability or all the other ways that folks' choices have been limited culturally, systemically, with no legitimate justification whatsoever. I'll bet you think that I'm never going to end this, so let me close with these words. When I came out to my dad, one of his responses concerned his belief that being gay limited my choices. That was his lived experience. He thought that no one would want me in their organization, or if they did, my career growth would be severely truncated. And indeed, as things turned out, I was hired by some folks because they thought I wasn't gay, and by others because they thought I was. And since coming out, I've been far too gay for some straight people and way too straight for many gay people. When it comes down to it, the first step, regardless of when you take it, is to love yourself, accept yourself, be yourself, And when you do, over time, all the rest will fall into place. Thank you for your patience and your consideration. This pastoral prayer, crafted by the Reverend Dr. Justin Osterman during difficult times, spoke to me, and I hope it will speak to you as well. Divine Presence, it is hard to know what to say, hard to know what to pray sometimes, when fear, sadness, anger, and confusion come over us. This world is so beautiful and so terrible at times. People so magnificent and so malevolent. It's hard to know how to feel when all the wonder and horror happen at the same time. We want to make things right and fair and clear. We want to make people kind, merciful, and just. We want to end violence, heal brokenness, prevent pain, restore hope. Our longing is so big, yet we feel so small. Sometimes despair speaks to us in poisonous whispers. Divine Spirit, please be that still small voice that speaks of love and comfort and hope. Be our calm amidst the storm. Be the fragile, beautiful flower that catches our eyes to remind us that seasons come and go in nature, in life, and in history. Be the kind eyes that remind us that there are open hearts and hands all around us waiting to love and help if we only open ourselves to them. Remind us in every way that we always have the power to choose how we will respond to life. And then help us to choose wisely, act justly, live peacefully, and embody every value and virtue that we wish to see in the world. Amen, and blessed be. Now please remain muted and join with our chancel choir in singing Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, like the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, springs set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. For those of you who this is your first introduction to me past what Dick offered at the beginning of the service, my name is QuianaDenae Perkins, and I am excited to be speaking to you from Ann Arbor, Michigan today. This sermon is called Coming Full Circle. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Before I begin, I need to call my comrades, elders, and ancestors into this space, making it holy, making it a temporary home. I want to acknowledge my bestie, Karen, in the house. I want to acknowledge that I'm standing on the shoulders of freedom fighters, some of which who never saw freedom, like Marsha P. Johnson, Rustard Baynard, and James Baldwin, just to name a few. I honor all of those who lost to the AIDS crisis, to the prison industrial complex, to toxic masculinity, to religious conversion, and all the other hate crimes. Black queer lives are so precious and beautiful. I'm standing in their legacy as an out and proud queer Black woman. Here's a couple of other housekeeping notes. I am a poet by nature. I use my hands, my whole body. So you will see a lot of my hands. For those who are, I'm just letting you know what's happening to you because I like consent. That's a big one for me. But I also just want to make you aware that I may not always look directly into the camera because I'm trying to read the words and figure out technology. So I just ask that you just give me a little grace around delivery. We're a year into COVID, but sometimes I'm still working out the technology. I want to offer the definition of a word I recently learned before we get started called homosia. And I want to offer you the definition. It's a strong dislike for homosexuals or homosexuality. So wherein homophobia is the dislike or prejudice against gay people, homosia, that's how you say it, is the dislike. So it really, when you put the two together, what you're saying is, if somebody fears homosexuals or they hate them, but neither of those is okay. But I learned that word because I'm a word freak, but also how important it is to be able to say, I don't care if you fear me or dislike me, you're disrespecting me. So we'll come back to that. And as a trigger warning, I will use the words sexual and domestic violence, and I will also use the word or phrasing thoughts of harm. Please adjust as needed to support your spirit. Now let us begin our journey. My descent into queerness started early, right around kindergarten. I always knew I was strange. I always knew I was out of sync with the world. I was marching to every drum. The first time I identified as something I claimed to be a Christmas tree. Later, after a name-calling incident in the schoolyard, I was informed that I was Black. This was new information to me. Now, given our short time together, I won't delve really hard into racial identity development theory, but will say that the connotations I had of Black and Blackness were not positive, hence I didn't want to be Black. In retrospect, I was experiencing concurrent identity development related to race, gender, and sexual orientation. Now, I do think this is common for queer Black people. Queer, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, sometimes BIPOC, and I will use that later on in the service. I think these layered developments resulted in the creation of my complex, beautiful self. The first time I felt a connection to something other than family was Jim Henson's Fraggle Rock. The strange little village of underground gnomes with their dozers and Madam Trash Heap were speaking my language. I saw so much of myself in these little Muppets. My two favorite characters remain Red Fraggle and Uncle Traveling Matt. Red was brave and fierce. She was full of energy and ideas, and she never let her friends down. Uncle Traveling Matt left home to explore the world, but used postcards and education to stay connected. See, I wanted to be both. I wanted to be someone who helped their family and someone who left home to explore the world. And although I lacked language, I sensed that Red Fraggle was the opposite of the women in my life, a contrast to femme. And I was drawn to that contrast and that otherness. There were other signs of my budding lesbianism identity. I was in love with 1980s glam rock album covers. Think 1971 Hall & Oates, where they presented gender on an arch and I felt a kinship. Men who wore makeup. Ooh. There are stories in my family that I will never live down about my love of Richard Simmons, which I still have, and my love of the 1980s music variety show, Solid Gold. Oh, Marilyn McCoo was one of my first girl crushes. I can recall the first time I heard Tracy Chapman's Fast Car. You got a fast car. I am sure it was on the radio, but when I saw her on TV, I was so surprised. See, she was small in stature and soft-spoken, but her voice, to me, to my spirit, was a thunderclap in July. Her existence validated my existence. I surmised from my 14-year-old wisdom that everyone called Tracy a lesbian and that liking her or her music then made me a lesbian. It's important to note that I didn't associate lesbianism with a sexual orientation, but instead viewed it as a way of being, of countering other. But in all of that confusion, I at least found a word to describe what I was experiencing. I found a shape to hold my otherness. But I also knew from community clues and context, everyone whispered and mocked lesbians, that saying you were a lesbian, that expressing it like Cousin Terry or Tracy Chapman was not okay. So I left my new language and my new world to myself. In high school, I had a chance to explore the library. I used the banned book list to find the lesbian themes. I landed on Rita Mae Brown's Ruby Fruit Jungle, which lived in my backpack for the longest extended checkout period possible. But I knew I had to be private or in new language I was learning. So I made sure to erase my name off the card in the front cover so no one else could know that I read the gay book. In my junior year, I was well aware that lesbianism was a sexual orientation. I had my first girl crush on Erin Kay. We were friends, we hung out, we chatted on the phone. But when I shared that I had a crush, she responded with the cutest little kiss on my cheek and let me know it was not reciprocated. Such a fitting end to that phase of my adolescence. In 1995, I attended St. Mary's University, a small Catholic liberal arts college in southern Minnesota. In my closed circles, I shared that I was a lesbian, which had morphed into being bisexual, but I was not out by any means. There, in that small community, the queer kids still found each other on sports teams, in the theater program, or at the local bars. I had friendships in all of those subgroups, and by my senior year, if you know me at all, I'm an organizer, and I've been an organizer, and we rallied and we formed a small but mighty gay student alliance at a Catholic college. In 1998, I came out to, well, the whole damn city. I sent a letter to the local GLBT. It was 1998, GLBT. We were up to 4 letters then, to the local magazine called Lavender. I asked for the letter to be printed anonymously, but it wasn't. And there in bold print was QuianaDenae Perkins, asking where did the lesbians gather and hang out. What followed within a day of Lavender hitting the newsstand was some strange family phone tree of gossip. My mom was elected to call me as the Speaker of the House and the central dispatcher of information. I can still hear her voice. Heard you're a lesbian. Honesty was my only option. Yep, I am. Her response to my surprise and joy was acceptance. My mother shared that she loved me and that would not be changing. Within a week, we had a big family dinner with all of my sisters and nibblings. We have family pictures from the event that we love and cherish that we refer to as the QuianaDenae coming out party. At this point in my story, I want to be clear about 2 things. First, I know that my ability to come out and be accepted as in my family is a privilege to have a family that loves me, period, with no caveats. I try not to take that for granted. I try to use my privilege for good, sharing my story in the hopes that it'll help someone else, help some other family. This is one of the reasons why I chose Julian as a Mermaid as the story for all ages. There is life-giving power in having adults in the life of queer, gender non-binary, and transgender youth. Abuela sees Julian. Affirms when he shares he too is a mermaid. She even takes him to be with the other mermaids. How beautiful. I also just noticed in all of this art how big everyone's booty is, and I love it. I love a big booty Black lady, Black Puerto Rican lady. This is so much of what I experienced in my coming out story. The experience I wish everyone had. But here's the second thing I need you to know. I'm leaving out all of the times I experienced rejection. When I was not invited, when I was not allowed to bring, told not to talk about. The times where I was tolerated out of familiar obligation. I cannot revisit those casually for this sermon. I honor them as a part of my story, but not the part that I'm telling today. So where am I now? 20 years goes by fast. I've been out for like 28 years now. I came out to myself, I'll say in 1994. And that's, you do the math. I don't do numbers. That's not my ministry. But 20 years goes by fast. And I've come out in so many ways, covering so many topics. My otherness runs deep. I am out as an unapologetic queer Black woman. I am out as a survivor of physical, sexual, and domestic violence. I am out as a person with mental health realities that include depression. I'm not a traditional mom. I will not be at the bake sale. And I'm an advocate for trans Black lives, and I am an abolitionist. I am a member of many dynamic, rich, and textured communities. I am a Black Unitarian Universalist. Now, to be clear, I am a Black person who is a UU, and I'm a beloved member in the Black Lives Unitarian Universalist faith community. There is much Venn overlap, but they're not the same and not interchangeable terms because context matters. So that's why I broke that down for y'all a little bit. I want to name that there is layers of othering and marginalization that come with being a member of and seeking ordination in a predominantly, but not all white denomination, but that's this whole other sermon. Just know that I'm living my best life and I'm thriving in the intersections of my marginalized identities. I want to offer these 4 learnings or themes that have helped me, and I hope that they help you too. The role of language. I came out as a lesbian, then bisexual, and then queer. I've currently settled on the micro labels of queer and pansexual. I like those today, right now. Now they could change in an hour because, life's like that. If these words existed in the 1990s, I had no access to them. Their prevalence and normalization has happened over the last 20 years. The results of this expansion of language means I get to increase my self-awareness and fully share who I am with others. There is a profound beauty in my identity becoming more nuanced and simultaneously very clarified. The role of honesty. The way I've come to understand and practice honesty matches my maturity. See, at 14, it was simple honesty with myself that I was attracted to women. At 40 plus, it looks a lot like being present with myself and intimate partners about consent and boundaries. Honesty with self has always been critical in my growth. We, and I do mean the royal usage, are taught to override our feelings with our inner voice is silenced in multiple ways. We have to unlearn this, build new narratives, embrace honesty. It is how we get to the next best version of ourselves. The role of community. Now, I use this word, some other words that might resonate with you in this spectrum are family, pod, birth family, chosen family. I even like cluster of care. Whatever word works, we're using community. Just like I found a correlation between honesty and maturity, I also see the correlation between my access to community support and my thriving. Times when I felt and acted alone, I struggled. Those are the times when I was more prone to ideas of self-harm and general destruction. I was moving at the speed of self and community harm. The times when I centered community as a member in need and as a contributing member, I found myself inundated with so much love and care. The times I have moved at the speed of trust and relationship have literally changed me at the core level. My connection and involvement with Blue is a living testament to this truth. I cannot say this enough. Find your people who see your beauty and your brilliance and are determined to make sure you always see it too. I wrote the word Jakaren, and I just wanted to tell Jakaren, I see your beauty and your brilliance, and I hope you always see it too. The importance of representation. Another reason I chose Julian's story was the representation of Black and Brown families and queer identity. There is a persistent stereotype that all BIPOC people are homophobic or practice homicia. Come back to that word, remember? This book changes that stale narrative and replaces it with a multi-generational, culturally rich fairy tale about gender presentation and play. I think people forget that not all BIPOC families and folks practice some kind of hate or fear of homosexuality because they also forget that BIPOC families are queer. BIPOCs are not a monolith. Queerness is not a monolith. Not all cultures are being expressed or experienced through a colonized lens. I could go on, I will stop, but trust and believe me, Representation, reflection of self matters. How do we move forward? Our world shifted at or about March 13-ish, 2020, when COVID-19 was declared a global pandemic. For the last 16 months, we have all been sheltering in place somewhere, somehow, I hope. That coupled with the death of George Floyd, a tumultuous election season, climate crisis escalation, glaring disparities in healthcare and education, and resource access, 2020 was the year of many plate tectonic shifts in our culture. There was a lot. We are holding a great deal of collective trauma and grief. And although we may have personal plans, we don't have a collective healing plan, y'all. I feel this in my heart and my spirit every day. I don't think we are ready for the hurricane of post-traumatic stress disorder and grief that is sitting on the edge of our lives. I think the only way that we come out of this moment better is if we intentionally work and reconnect and align with our shared humanity. We are not just Black or just queer, we are whole. I'm going to say that again. I am not just Black and I am not just queer. I am whole. I am both. We are whole, complex people who come to the table of survival whole. We should be accepted whole, and we need to do the work from the places where we are whole. We hold many truths that exist in the frame of a community, hence the work of survival must be done with our whole selves within that same community frame. My reemergence plan includes most of the following, or some of the following, or a dash or a heap. My reemergence plan includes dedicated healing time and the offer of grace to self and to others. We are in an uncharted space and we will need both grace and healing time. I plan to find more ways to engage in Black and Asian solidarity work. I plan to support Indigenous communities, both water warriors who are fighting for climate justice and my prayer warrior siblings, holding space for the genocides that took place at religious boarding schools all across the Americas, North America, which includes Canada, and America. I will continue to give money to the national bailout to get Black and brown bodies free from cages and resourced after they're released, because I truly do believe until we get free, none of us are free. We all have something to give. Ask how you can be of service to your community. In closing, I want to share these 3 simple but powerful words. Do not postpone joy. Don't let joy pass you by. When you think joy, wherever you think joy might be, go to that place. Set up a home and make room for new neighbors. Don't let anything hold you back from what you know to be good and true. What you know to be good and true about who you are and how you love. Don't let anyone stop anyone else from being their true self and being with those who they love. When I'm done speaking in a few moments, the song I've chosen to play is This Joy by the Resistance Revival Chorus. I want us to leave this holy space knowing that joy and light is mine, is yours, is ours. That joy is an act of resistance, and we are resisting with our whole hearts when we come out. We are resisting with our whole hearts, coming full circle back into love. Ashe, my friends, and amen.
This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that? This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. Oh, this strength that I have, this strength that I have, this strength that I have. Oh, yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have. Oh, yeah. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have. Oh, yeah. The world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it. The world can't take it away. Oh, this love that I have. This love that I have. Oh yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This love that I have. Oh yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this love that I have, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Singing, the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. This pride that I have, this pride that I have. This pride that I have. Oh yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This pride that I have. I said the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this pride that I have, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. All this peace that I have, oh, yeah. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give me my peace that I have. Oh yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. Won't you sing about peace? This peace that I have. Oh yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. I said the world didn't give it. The world can't take it away. All this joy that I have, this joy that I have. This joy that I have. Oh yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have. I said the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away.
Wow, if there were ever any thought why I come to church, it has just been dispelled. Thank you, QuianaDenae. When Noemi and I worked on the capital campaign a few years back, we had a good fortune to be advised by Bud Swank, a gentleman about the age that I am now, who had been a minister since 1960. Let me tell you about this man's integrity. After Bud had been a minister for decades in his denomination, his son came out to him as gay. And when that denomination ruled that there was no place in it for his gay son, Bud, after nearly 40 years in that denomination, quit their ministry. Folks like that, folks like you, are the kind of folks I've met through the First Unitarian Church of Oakland over the past 27 years. But in advising us about raising money, told us about the most generous person he had ever met. It was an older woman living on a fixed income with virtually no discretionary resources whatsoever, who without fail, every Sunday, put a dollar bill in the plate. We tried to lift up that spirit of such incredible generosity during the campaign, focusing on everyone's participation rather than primarily on those with the most resources at their avail. And you know what? You came through. We trust that same spirit of participatory generosity continues to live on today. Please join me in saying the congregational commitment. The words are on the screen. To the work of the church that is weaving a tapestry of love we call community. We dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings.
I want to thank you for letting me be here and share my story and my COVID reemergence plan. How to survive the apocalypse. First, learn to listen, not only for enemies around corners and hidden places, but for the faint footsteps of hope and the whisper of resistance. Hone your skills and aim your heart towards kindness and stockpile second chances. Under the weight of destruction, we will need a stronger shelter of forgiveness and the deeper wells that give the sweet water of welcome. We have a place for you. When the world ends, we must not add destruction to destruction, not accept a beggar's bargain, to fight death with more death, in order to survive the apocalypse, any apocalypse at all. We have to give up the counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency, the mistaken addiction to competition, and the lie that the last to die has somehow survived. Ashe and amen, my friends.